welcome to my channel. So today we are going to talk about the eyeshadow palettes, especially eyeshadow palettes recommendation for beginners. So I've been into makeup for quite some time, but my favorite is eyeshadow. So I have tons and tons of eyeshadow palettes. One of the reasons for that is because I do craft the eyeshadows, then I need to test a lot of a formula then to compare with my own formula. That's why if I want to say if I am an expert in something, then it must be eyeshadow palettes. Just because I have had my hands on so many eyeshadow palettes already. So today I want to recommend some eyeshadow palettes for beginners. Honestly, in my opinion, for beginners, then the neutral palettes are the easiest to work with because it's difficult to go wrong. So that's why I am going to recommend eyeshadow palettes, neutral eyeshadow palettes from drugstore to high-end. I would suggest the beginners to start with drugstore eyeshadow palettes, especially high-quality drugstore eyeshadow palettes. Simply because when you are just starting, you probably need to buy everything, like eyeshadow palettes, lipsticks, foundation, highlighter, bronzer, blush, everything. Then everything costs money. If you buy everything high-end, then you're gonna be spending tons of money for makeup just to start with. So I think the drugstore eyeshadow palettes, the high quality drugstore eyeshadow palettes would be the most economical. That's why I want to go from a drugstore gradually to high-end. Then the first drugstore eyeshadow palette that I want to talk about is from e.l.f. Actually, it's not one. I have 6 e.l.f. eyeshadow palettes to show you. The first 2 I want to show you are the matte for matte eyeshadow palettes. So there are, I believe now they have 5 or 6, no, 4 or 5 maybe, at least 4 out there. But I bought these like a couple of years ago, so by the time there were only these 2 on the market. This is the first one. Oh no, it's the second one. This one is the first one. So you can see it's a pretty neutral, mostly just a brown, pink eyeshadows. Then all of them are mattes. So this one has a pretty good quality and very easy to work with. These colors are very pretty. Then later they came up with a second palette, which is this one. Honestly, I think the formula for this one is slightly better. I don't know if I'm crazy, but that's how I feel. This one the quality of the 2 is slightly better than the 1. This one is warmer than the first one, then also have a wider color range. So if I really want to recommend, I probably would recommend this one over the first matte for matte. Actually, just matte for matte. If you think those are too plain because they are all mattes, you want some shimmers in there, then I also have 2 here for you. One is Needed Nude. This one is, I need to be careful about this one because one of the shades got loose during shipping. So yeah, you can see it's mostly just brown and golden shades. Some of them are, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4. It has 4 mattes, then 6 shimmers. Actually, 2 of them are kind of like a satin finish. Then the other one is this called Nude Rose Gold, which is a rose gold palette. So you can see this one is really pretty, relatively more pink toned and more romantic. So this one reminds me a lot of the Naked 3 palette, which I'll show you later. So this one's very pretty. I don't know how to recommend in between these 2 palettes because I think it really depends on your color preference. The other 2 eyeshadow palettes are the Prism eyeshadows. So these are all shimmers, but they are kind of like metallic shades. This one is mostly gold and brown, mostly brown. Couple of one gold, then one white here. The other one is called Sunset. I think the Sunset is more like a pink toned. But I think this one is exclusive for Ulta, so you can only get it from Ulta website, I believe. All of these shades are very pretty and have high quality. If you only want to choose one among these 6, I probably would choose one of those with both shimmer and mattes in there. But like what I said, it really depends on your personal preference. Then the second drugstore eyeshadow palettes that I want to talk about are from Essence. These are the Eyeshadow palettes. I have 4 of these. I think they all have 4. I got all the variations. So I'm not very sure if these are still available at Ulta. I bought them. I bought these for $5 per piece. So these are like dirt cheap. But I don't think these have the highest quality. If you want me to compare between these and the e.l.f. palettes, I would say that e.l.f. palettes are definitely better than these. These are so affordable. I mean, these are $5 per piece. And I forgot to say the e.l.f. palettes are $10 per piece. And sometimes they are on sale. You probably can get it even cheaper. So yeah. But these palettes are, I would recommend them just like you don't want to spend a lot of money on it. You just want to have something to start with, just play with, then these are pretty good to go. But Essence also have other palettes. I have a couple of palettes, at least I know one of them is totally better than these. So these are the palettes I'm talking about. I have used this palette called Spice Up Your Life, which looks like this. See, it's very pretty. It's a very warm tone palette with 16 shades. I believe this one is $10. So I probably got it on sale as well. So I paid even less. Then this one has very good quality. This one's totally better than the eyeshadow palettes that I just showed you. They have different variations for these palettes as well. I think they probably have 4 too. But I only have 2. One of these. One is this. The other one is this one called I Am With The Band. So this one's completely new. I never used it, but this one's pretty as well. If you really want me to recommend one eyeshadow palette from this brand, then I would totally recommend this one. The Spice Up Your Life. If you want to go slightly higher end compared to e.l.f. and Essence, then I would recommend NYX. So especially this NYX Ultimate Eyeshadow Palette. This one has 16 shades in there. As you can see, these eyeshadows are very pretty. Warm toned, mostly brown, golden shimmers and brown shimmers and the burgundy colors. So all of these are very useful shadows and they are very pretty. NYX shadows have pretty high quality as well. At least I think better than a lot of drugstore eyeshadow palettes. So I really like this one. Then Milani also has some good shadows. I have 2 of their palettes here. Actually, I just got them very recently. I'm not very sure how old these are. Oh, sorry. This way. So I'm not very sure how old these are. Maybe they came out fairly recently. I am not very sure, but I just got these like a few weeks ago. So this one I have I have 2, right? The first one is Pure Passion. So it looks like this. It's also a warm toned palette with both shimmer and mattes in there. I used it a couple of times. This one's very good quality, except for this darker brown color. It's a little bit patchy, but it's okay. You still can work with it. So I think it's because you know, sometimes when shadows have a lot of black oxide in it, then they tend to be patchy. That's why black shadows are so difficult to make. So I don't really complain. I mean, I don't really blame them for this. So overall, I think that this is a pretty high quality and pretty eyeshadow palette. The other one called Most Loved Mattes. So this one is completely a matte eyeshadow palette. So all of these are matte. So they also have, so these shades are very interesting. See, they start from lightest to the darkest. And each row, each column is different color. So this one is brown, this one's more pink, really. This is more purple, and then this one is like orange type of a shade, or warm toned brown, whatever you want to call it. Overall, I think the Milani palettes are very high quality. I would recommend them to anybody. So this, I forgot to say that this NYX palette is $17.99. Then these Milani palettes are probably $15 per piece on the Milani website. But I got them from Walmart. I believe that this Pure Passion was 14 some dollars, close to $15. Then this most I Love the mattes is somewhere around $10. If you want to go slightly higher end than that, I would recommend Morphe. But honestly, I am not very sure if Morphe is actually higher end compared to NYX and Milani, because these are more expensive. I mean, this palette is $23, I believe, but they also have more shades in there. Like this palette has 35 shades in there. You know, this is their 3502 palette. So this one is super pretty. And Morphe actually has pretty good quality eyeshadows. They are just very affordable. So I really like Morphe palettes. The only thing is, my only complaint about Morphe palettes is that even though they have 35 shades in the palette, but a lot of the shades are very similar. If you apply them on the eye, sometimes you can't even tell the difference, even though they are slightly different in the palette, if you know what I'm talking about. I also have the Jaclyn Hill palette, so I think this one was really famous. It might be still famous. Yeah, I believe so. So this palette is pretty. Look at this. So I know I want to talk about the neutral palettes today, but this one has some pretty colors in there. But this palette is very useful. I mean, you can create so many different eye looks with it, and this quality is super good. It's not, honestly, it's not worse than high-end makeup. I think this one is very good, but this one is slightly more expensive. This one is $38. So there's a brand that I think I totally should mention, is ColourPop. Because if you want to talk about balance between price and quality, ColourPop must be one of the tops. They have a lot of options for eyeshadows now. This is just one of the palettes. It's called I Think I Love You. It's pretty neutral. But like what I said, they have tons and tons of eyeshadow palettes now. They just can't stop launching. So if you are interested in them, I would totally recommend you to go on their website and see their options. It's just too many out there. Trust me, a lot. Now, let's move on to high-end. So, to talk about the high-end eyeshadow palettes, then I would totally first talk about the Naked palettes from Urban Decay. So, these are their Naked 2 and 3. I can't recommend the Naked Original anymore because it's been discontinued, but these two palettes are pretty good as well. They're so classic. So, the Naked 2 is more of a brown toned eyeshadow palette. So, it's relatively similar to the original, but this one is relatively more cool toned, and also the color range is slightly wider compared to the original. And also, I just found out today in the Naked 2 and the original Naked palettes, they have one overlapping shade, which is this Half Baked. It's a gold color, gold shimmer color, I would say. So I just found out today. It's really funny. Usually when they release palettes, they always include completely different eyeshadows, but I guess this one was one of the old palettes, so they didn't have that rules by the time, I guess. Then the Naked 3 is one of my favorites. So, okay. See, it's a rose gold palette. So it's just so romantic and so classic. I really love this palette. Oh, like what I mentioned before, this palette is kind of like the e.l.f. palette. It's called Nude Rose Gold. If you compare them side by side, you will find out that they are very similar. I believe I swatched them side by side. They are like 80 to 90% shades are very similar, almost like dupes to each other. So it's crazy. Then, so if you really like this palette and you don't want to spend $54 on the palette, then go for the e.l.f. palette. It's called Nude Rose Gold. The only complaint I have for these palettes is that they don't have enough mattes. I believe both of these palettes have only 3 mattes in the palettes, Then the rest of 9 shadows are matte, are shimmers. I think that's why eventually they came up with this palette, which is 12 matte shadows. It's called Naked Ultimate Basics. This palette is pretty good as well. All of the shadows are mattes. Then if you are really into matte shadows, this is a good option too. I feel like I really have to mention this Too Faced chocolate bar palette because it has a pretty high quality and it's very neutral, very pretty. Mostly it has gold, brown shades, but it also has some burgundy, pink, and purple shades in there. So I feel like this one can create more looks compared to the Naked palettes. But Naked palettes are so classic, and those are my favorites, so they have to be talked about first. You know, it's a totally bias. I have to talk about Anastasia palettes. So I do have the Modern Renaissance palette, however, I don't have it with me because one of my friends borrowed it. So she's been using a lot of that palette. I'm so happy for that palette because it's been so much loved. Not like the palettes with me, they're like all new. They're barely used because apparently I have so many eyeshadow palettes and I don't use eyeshadows that often. At least not that often compared to, you know, for a person who has so many eyeshadow palettes. I don't use them enough. That's why all of my palettes are like new. Anastasia palettes are so good. Their eyeshadows are very, very high quality, very creamy, very soft, very pigmented. So I really like their palettes. I don't know why I keep showing you this when I'm talking about Modern Renaissance palette, but yeah, anyways, so I would really recommend this Soft Glam palette as well because see, I have already showed you when I'm talking about a Modern Renaissance palette. Anyways, so this palette is very pretty. So mostly brown shades, brown gold shades, very neutral, very warm tone. So if you don't want to get a Modern Renaissance palette, this is a good option as well. It's got a soft glam. There's another high-end brand that I want to talk about is this Lorac. So they have 4, maybe 5 now, I don't know. But what I know is 4 Pro palettes. I have a 1 and a 4. So 1 is mostly a brown toned eyeshadow palette. It has a pretty good balance between warm and cool toned shadows. I don't remember how 3 looks like. I believe the 2 is also a brown toned eyeshadow palette, but I didn't pick that one up because I felt like the 1 is prettier than that one. That's the bottom line. Then I also have 4. The 4, I like 4. I think this one is pretty. So this one is compared to 1, it's more like a mauve toned eyeshadow palette. So I really like this one too. So Lorac shadows are very smooth. That's how I feel about these about Lorac. So the shadows feel a little bit like Anastasia, but not as soft and creamy. But Lorac shadows are very good, very high quality. I would totally recommend these palettes. I want to show you guys these Charlotte palettes as well. So I think these were released at different times. I believe this one is the first one. So this is original Charlotte with or 12 matte shadows. If you look at these shadows, they are kind of organized from the lightest to darkest for each row. This one is brown. This one is more this one's a more warm tone of brown. This one is mauve. This one is more cool tone of brown. So I really like this organization for palettes. But honestly, if you want to talk about the quality, I feel like among these 3, this one has the lowest quality. I'm not saying this palette is bad. It's just not as okay. Let me rephrase it. I would say the formula, this is my least favorite formula compared to the 3. Then I feel like I like this one better. I think this one was released the 2nd. It's the Charlotte in Bloom palette. So this one has some shimmer in it instead of all mattes. I like the formula for this palette better. Then the last one is the Charlotte Toasted palette. I believe this palette was just released a couple of years ago, around the time Urban Decay released their Naked Heat palette. This one is so pretty. It's totally my favorite. And also they changed the formula. I'm pretty sure they changed the formula. These shadows are a lot softer and smooth, a lot more creamy compared to the other two Target palettes. So if you really want me to recommend among the three, I would totally recommend this one. Last but not least, I want to recommend those of the colors palettes. So different from other palettes that I showed you, these palettes are actually from BoxyCharm, but the rest are were selected and purchased all by myself completely. Then this is one of my favorite those of the colors palettes. It's their Hidden Treasure palette. I really like their formula. It's just so creamy, so blendable, and so easy to work with. I really like these. But they use a different formula for these palettes. I remember I probably talked about this in one of the BoxyCharm unboxing video. So because I also have these palettes. If you remember, oh no, sorry. So if you have been around for BoxyCharm for a while, then you probably already knew that this palette was from October 2019 base box of a BoxyCharm. So these palettes totally have a different formula to the Hidden Treasure palette. And I even went into their ingredients list, and I knew they even had different ingredients. So, but I really like these palettes too. I mean, both formula are very good. They're just different. But I really like this palette because it's so small. See, it has 5 shadows from lightest to darkest browns. Then it's just so travel friendly. If I'm going for a conference, I would totally bring one of these with me. I'm gonna briefly show you the other palettes. First is this one. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry, English is not my first language. But anyways, so this palette is darker compared to Baked Brown, but it's still a like more warm toned brown shades. I haven't been using these palettes a lot. The Baked Brown is the one used the most. Then this one is called Marvelous Mauves. Yeah, so it's a mauve toned palette, also from the lightest to the darkest. Then the last one is Blushing Berries. This is more of a deeper purple toned shadow. I like these little palettes. I think they're so cute, and the formula is so good. I really like them. I believe there are totally 6 of these palettes. I know one of them is called Snow Angel. That one is more like a colorful palette, but I didn't pick that one up because I feel like that palette is too colorful for me, but I may change my mind. I might pick it up at some point. Then the last one is the called Pretty Cool, I believe. That one is a cool toned palette. It's more of a gray, very cool toned brown type of shades, so I am not too into that one. I have never thought about getting it, so but we'll see. I may change my mind. But so far, these are all the palettes, these mini palettes that I have. Oh, by the way, I actually got this one, Baked Brown, from a BoxyCharm box, and I swamped the rest. So these are all the palettes that I want to show you today. Please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you are supposed to get all of these. I just wanted to bring you guys enough options to choose from. I also understand that there are tons of other good options out there. I just don't have those palettes to show you guys. So this concludes this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please consider subscribe to my channel. I do a lot of beauty box unboxing videos, beauty product review videos, and makeup tutorials, and sometimes I do DIYs. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.